Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Ludluda by Steve Beard and Jeff Noon. This is a book coming out December 3rd, 2024. It's a fantasy novel from Angry Robot. So I received this beautiful review copy from Angry Robot in exchange for a fair review. I'm also part of the review tour, so hop onto my Instagram. It's very easy. It's Tina's Always Reading to see links to the other people who are taking part of it, and you can check out their reviews and stuff. So, yeah. An absolutely wild and amazing ride. Ludluda is a weird fantasy. It leans heavily into the weird, but without becoming incomprehensible. I absolutely adored it. Now, Ludluda is the second part of a duology with this book, Gog Magog. Clearly, I had an ARC copy. I read it earlier this year. It came out in February. I found it fantastic as well. So if you haven't read Old Goggy, read this first, as even the jacket copy that I'm going to read now of Ludluda has spoilers for Gog Magog. So honestly, if you love weird fantasy fiction, if you just love fantasy, if you love strong female characters, if you love old women who are super cross, if you love adventures and quests and stuff, you should totally check this duology out. But yeah, definitely read Gog Magog first. So I'm going to get into it. What is Ludluda about? A dragon-haunted city, a cosmic reckoning. Ludwitch, her power drawn from the ghost of the vast dragon, seeks a fragile peace after a great war. But the old sailor Katie Mead is afraid. Bryn, the young girl who she has brought up the River Nisus to a coming-of-age festival, seems to be surrounded by dark prophecies. Are the fates of the girl and Ludwitch entwined? When Bryn disappears, Katie, with only a mechanical man grinding his circuits to dust for company, must travel through the strange heart of the city and beyond to find her. The poisonous spirit of the night serpent lies in wait. Will this be Katie's final voyage? This book picks off right where the last one ended, as you probably expected, given they're a pair. If you were worried that it was going to take place like 6 months later or something, nope, it starts right away. Katie Mead is probably my favorite character on all of the books that I've read this year in 2024. She's the same cantankerous old plant lady as she was in Gog Magog, and she is my idol. She's so gross and crass and hilarious. When I'm an old lady, I want to be like her. She doesn't lose any of that in this book either, but she also grows a bit more lovable as she takes on a more kind of heroic role near the end. So it's she does grow a little bit. She does change a little bit, but she definitely retains that same kind of fun feel that she had in the first book. The other characters and how they kind of reacted to Katie were what I loved about Gog Magog, and we got a little bit less of that in this one, as a lot of the novel is following Katie, following clues, and, you know, having short moments with new characters here and there, but we still have Lek in a good deal of it, which was great, because I love him. He's great. I'm going to have a bit of a spoiler part at the end where I talk about my favorite parts of this book, so more about him there, actually, but yeah, Lek is still in it a bit. The story in this one is tighter, as there's kind of a real goal. In the first one, it was kind of like a quest down the river aspect to it. The Hesting didn't seem like that big of a deal. You actually learn way more about the Hesting in this book and why it was so important. At least I felt like in Gog Magog, the Hesting seemed like kind of like, oh, you know, we got to get her here, but it didn't seem like it would have that much of an impact if she didn't get to her coming of age thing. But no, it is kind of more important here. Gog Magog was fun in that way, though, because you didn't know what was going to pop up next on the river. It was very much a quest narrative. But in this one, Katie is trying to stop Gog Magog from coming back into the world, as well as trying to pollinate her seedlings that are sprouting all over her. So there's more urgency and tension than in the first book, I would argue. Obviously, the world building is a big part of this duology, and somehow in this second book, it gets even richer. There is one aspect, I'll admit, I wasn't super into, but it's totally a spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about it now. If you're curious about what it is and you've read Ludluda already, or you just aren't going to read it for some reason, you should. It'll be at the end. But if Gog Magog was like being thrown into a cold lake, in Ludluda you're already fully immersed, so stuff starts to make more sense because you've adapted to it. Like, for example, the Hesting. In this way, more world building is allowed to be imparted because we already kind of have the foundation from the first book, so we get to learn kind of the intricacies of these things as well as learning some new things. So we actually learn about Gog Magog the book a bit as we read Ludluda, which is really fun. For example, there's one point they talk about how Fainur, I can't remember how you say it, I'm going to say Fainur's excess, you know, the ghost, like, well, I guess the ectoplasm is used to like generate power. That was such a cool idea. And it was something I was curious about in Gog Magog, how they powered things. So I was like, there must be some kind of electrical grid around here. But no, it's actually like the ectoplasm from the dragon. I thought that was so cool. The book is also so incredibly funny. Just like the first one, we have some really interesting descriptions and like really fun ways of playing with language that I really enjoyed. But we also have Katie's acerbic dialogue. There was a lot of that in here, as there's kind of a new character that's this young man, and she kind of makes fun of him a lot, and that was really fun. And I mean, it wasn't as strong as it was in the first one, because in the first one it really was almost like a found family crew aspect, even though they're really only together for a couple days. But we had a lot of back and forth with Lek and Katie. In this one, Lek is very much like depressed and sad, and so we don't get as much of that, but it allows their relationship to develop in a different way. Yeah. It's also very easy to picture things in this world because we're given very precise detail. For some reason, this book reminds me of claymation. It might be because my kids have been like obsessed with Chicken Run lately, and I was reading it while they were watching it. Maybe that's why. But it could also be because there are so many like little fiddly things about it. So much effort seems to be put into the descriptions of like the world and everything about it. That it feels very like well placed together, which is how I imagine claymation is done. There's this really wild claymation movie called Red God? Dead God? Dead God something. Whatever, I'll put it up here. And apparently it took like 10 years to make. Now, do not watch this if you are faint of heart. This movie is just like wild. You're like, oh my God, and it's gross and gritty. You know what? If you like Gog Magog, you might. I don't know. I'm just don't look into it first before you watch it. But no, like, it kind of reminded me of that, in that it's so like detailed and like gritty and weird. Anyway, what am I talking about? I actually don't have a lot more to say about this book, because while I went into it planning to like flag stuff and make little notes, I was so immersed in the story I totally forgot to do that. I just, that's saying a lot, because I didn't want to stop and like make notes. I wanted to just keep going, and I read this book so fast. I read it in like a whole weekend, and it's quite big, but it flows just so quickly, and it's so much fun. I will say the ending was bittersweet, but it was a good way to end it. It's definitely a duology I will be rereading. As I said, I'm going to jump into some spoilers now, just some things I kind of want to chat about. So if you're, not sticking around for that, thank you so much for watching, and definitely read these books if you haven't already. And thank you to Angry Robot for the ARC copy. I really love it. In fact, I don't think it's an ARC. I think it's a final, and thank you so much. It's so pretty. So onwards to spoilers. Okay, so my favorite scene of the book was that weird intoxicated spaceship egg scene. It has two things about it I loved. The first was the fact that there's just a crashed spaceship in this fantasy world, and people just like accept it, and they're like, some people are studying it, and people just kind of like hang out there, and I thought that was so cool. I just love when that kind of thing is like normalized. It just kind of gives such a depth to like, makes you think about kind of other things that could happen in this book. I don't know. Just makes you think of other things that could happen in like this world. I don't know. I just love that kind of thing. I love that it wasn't like really explained, and no one really like cared. I also love that right after this part, the frets come and Katie and Lek have a smooch. I died laughing. I was like, oh my God, are they going to have a little kiss? Is she going to kiss the robot? Like plant lady and robot guy? Like, I love it. I also like how after Lek was like, he admires Katie and he compares her to Katharine Hepburn, which was a hilarious comparison. I just love that. I was like, oh my God. I don't like really kind of ship them as a couple, but I just thought that whole thing was just like so cute. The ending, when Bryn shows up as a bitter old woman, I guess not old, maybe like my age, was really interesting. I'm not sure if it's meant to imply more to the story or something to imply that stories don't end, even when the book is over. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. It also sort of implies that Katie is an immortal warrior in a sense, destined to battle Gog Magog again, because clearly he's like inhabiting Bryn. At least that's how I read it. I read it that he was somehow either like possessing Bryn, and it wasn't Bryn speaking, but Gog Magog, or like she and him have kind of like paired up, which is something I also love in fantasy novels. I also thought the whole plant lady versus toxic dragon is sort of like an environmental, sort of like environment versus pollution, which is something I think, is always on our minds in this day and age. So I thought that was kind of a cool battle as well. Like, it was great to see the environment win. Is that going to happen in real life? I don't know. That was really fun. So this kind of ties in a little bit to the one thing I wasn't super into in this book, and that was the whole alternate world with ours. I liked how what was happening in 1940s London and in like history going back was reflected or mirrored in Ludwig. I thought that was a really cool idea. I liked that kind of parallel universe thing. But there was a lot of references when she actually went to London that I, who have never been there, I know I'm only talking about the places I've traveled to, but I've actually never been to England, was like, I don't know what the stuff is. I don't know what the Piccadilly Circus is. Like some circus, I guess. I don't know. As such, it was hard for me to picture these areas, unlike the rest of the book in the fantasy world where I could clearly see what was going on. When it came to London, he just kind of said she went here and he went and she went there, and I'm just like, I don't know what these things are. So while I understood the London part played a huge point in the plot, it was not my favorite part of the novel. Did I think it was terrible? Absolutely not. I thought it was kind of fun how she was like confused by certain things, and then how she was trying to talk to that other woman, can't remember her name, but the lady in the 40 Harriet, Julia, something like that. Anyway, I liked their exchanges. I just, yeah, if I had to point at something I didn't really like in the book, it wasn't like I didn't even really like it. It was just something that I was just like not amazed by. Overall, though, like, I mean, I really love this book. I'm gonna have a really hard time choosing my favorite book of the month because I've got this one and I've got Titan Shade. Essentially, those two, I love both of them. So we'll have to see. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments, no spoilers though, for people that haven't read it, what your favorite part of the book was, or if you've read these. Yeah.